bar none, probably, people probably take lessons off of my videos. I was going to show you Abbott Costello's Who's On First. Ever see that? I'm sure everybody here has probably heard that before. And what better arena to have that video shown than right here in our church. However, we're about to get into a you like my woohoo! We're about to get into probably one of the chapters of the Bible that when people read it, their heads spin, which is the whole point of the whole Who's On First, because Costello's head is spinning by the end of that little routine. And we're going to get into something that's every bit. Whenever it was decided I was going to go ahead and do Romans all the way through, I've always had that eye open for Romans 7, because that's that point where it says I don't want to do what I do. I want to do good, but I seem to do bad. It goes back and forth, and it makes your head just explode. It doesn't seem very clear, which is our the title of our sermon today. Is it clear? And since we've got a little bit, I was wondering, should I break this down into sections? And as I was studying, I was sitting there thinking, no, I believe the very best way to understand this chapter is going to be all the way through it. Because there's going to be a point that Paul wants us to get to. And without going through all the sections, that point is going to be lost on us, especially if we have a week break in between a couple of the messages. And I could stretch this out for a few weeks. But I think it'd be better if we get it all done in one. We're going to understand it that much more clearly in the end. Romans 7. So when we do this, I want us to think of a pillar, a great big huge pillar that's buried into the ground. And we can see the top of the pillar. And what we're going to do is dig our way down and try to get to the foundation of this pillar. And this pillar is going to be the pillar of truth. It's a pillar of revelation, a pillar of reconciliation of what we need to wrap our minds around to get to the next level. 4 sections. And let's just not, and I'm not going to read the whole chapter to you because it's kind of back and forth enough. It'd be easier if we just take it section by section. So that's what we're going to do here today. The first one, the first pillar, is called our relationship to the law. Now this is nothing new. We've had 6 chapters, and Paul has been a little bit insistent on our relationship and our understanding of some of the terms that we have with sin, with the law, and how we reconcile with it. So what he's been using, he's using different illustrations. He's used, I think, baptism, and he's used slavery, all of which are known to the reader, to the listener. But now he has something else altogether. He's talking about marriage. About marriage. And he says this. This is verses 1 through 3. And so he starts out. He says, do you not know? This is if we had watched Who's On First, Bud Abbott, or actually Costello says, "What are you asking me for?" And gets all worked up. I was gonna say that's our title, because he says, "Don't you know? What are you asking? What are you asking me for? And don't you know, brothers? For I am speaking to men who know the law. You know it. I know it. That the law has authority over man, for only as long as he lives. Don't you know this? For example, by law, a married woman is bound to her husband for as long as that guy's alive. As long as the husband's alive, that's how long she's bound to him. But if her husband dies, then she can go ahead and marry somebody else. Right? But if she goes ahead and marries somebody else while the husband's still alive, then she's called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, then she's free and released from that law and is no longer considered adulteress, even though she's married to another person. Now we've really messed up this whole married thing in this day and age. And so the illustration almost doesn't seem to make sense to today's day and age. But your luck, I'm here to help you out. If you were a Roman, if you were a Jew, it didn't matter what you were back then, right? If you were a woman, you were bound to your husband. Period. There's no such thing as divorce. That didn't happen. And it was extremely personal. You were bound, tied, united. It was that was it. You were not going to get out of that relationship. And he talked about law. He wants you to know that you're bound to the law. And in this illustration, the woman, she's a believer, she's a Christian. And the man, that's the law. He's the law, kind of. It sounds bad almost. It's bad for the guy. It's not. However, we're going to keep on going here. But the problem is this. It said in our illustration that she's free when the man dies. But the law never dies. We know this. So, Paul, what are you talking about? The law doesn't die. This guy can die. This illustration doesn't make sense. Glad you asked that, he says. He says, so then therefore what really is going to happen, says my brothers, you die. You die. You die to the law, through the body of Christ, that you might belong to another, to him who was raised from the dead, in order that we might bear fruit to God. And now we see some of these other illustrations coming full circle. Because way back in Romans 1, 2, wherever it was, he used the illustration of baptism. And what do? We died. We went through the death with Christ. We were buried. We rose again in newness of life. So the illustration is this. We're united. We're tied to our husband, the law. And by the way, it's not really the law that's bad, but rather the condemnation that comes from breaking that law is all yours to deal with, to love and honor and serve until death do you part. And then that's where we're getting at. You need to sever yourself from that. It's never going to die. It's never going to go away. How do you get away from this? How do you separate yourself from this? Well, you die through Christ. And that law and that bond and that connection is therefore severed. As death breaks the bond between husband and wife, so death, the believer's death, with Christ breaks the bond which formerly yoked you to the law. Now, free to enter a union in Christ. This is actually the easiest of the levels of this pillar of understanding and reconciliation. It's going to get far more tricky here on after. As a result, we're married to Christ, and the law no longer has a claim. We're no longer under the condemnation that is affected on us through the law. Now, Paul explains this here, freedom, in verses 5 and 6. It says, for when we were controlled by the sinful nature, the sinful passions aroused by the law were at work in our bodies. Let me stop there and read that one more time, because this is one of those, remember this, it's coming back on us. It said, the sinful passions aroused by the law. That's going to come back on us. They were at work in our bodies. So that we bore the fruit of death. When you're married to someone, you work in harmony with each other to produce whatever your life produces, right? Same thing when you're in harmony with the law, when you're in harmony with sin. The death the fruit you bear is death. That's the kind of fruit you have. But now, by dying to what was once bound within us, we've been released from the law, so that we serve in a new way of the Spirit, not in the old way of the written code. Right? Instead of despair, there's joy. And I'm telling you now, whenever you're full of yourself, when you're bound to the law and sin, there's nothing but despair. Just open up any kind of social media at 3 o'clock in the morning and look at the despair being written out there. Oh, depressed, can't sleep. Looking for some kind of, I don't know, what do you call it when you're looking for something? Yeah, I'm feeling bad. I need somebody to feel bad for me. What's it called? Nobody said misery. Well, you feel misery, but that's not what I was looking for. Moving on. Instead of despair, there's joy. Instead of bondage, there's freedom. Instead of death, there's life. Which makes sense because you've been born again to a new life. You no longer belong to the law, but to Christ. So what's our second wisdom? What's our second pillar? We're digging down now. I mean, that was the surface. Now we need to dig down to the second part of our revelation, this pillar, trying to make our way to that foundation. And a second understanding, a second revelation, a second bit of truth and wisdom, right, is law and sin and how it reacts with each other within us. Things begin to get a little bit more complicated. And now Paul takes a different turn in how he starts to explain this. It's almost autobiographical at this point. He's talking about himself. The relational law to sin. And this is how he begins. He begins this. So what do we say? What are you asking me for? What do we say? Is the law sin? Is that what we're saying? Certainly not. Now he's just telling you right now, after all this stuff that we see the law has done, he's saying that the law is good. It's good. We're going to continue on, and the further we go, you're going to think, how is this good? You're not going to understand how this is good. Which is why we got to take this piecemeal. Is the law sin? No. No, indeed. I would never have known what sin was except through the law. I have not known what it was to covet if the law hadn't said, hey, don't covet. Now that's almost generic, and this is one of the times where I like to look at other verses or other Bible versions, and the New Living Bible actually says it a little bit different, and it says it in a way I like. It says, well then, am I suggesting that these laws of God are evil? No. No, they're not evil. They're not. They're not. Of course not. No, the law is not sinful. The law is not evil. The law is not bad. But it was the law that showed me my sin, that made apparent my sin, that gave an outline, definition, rose my sin from what I didn't know I had. I would never have known the sin in my heart, the evil desires that's hidden there. If the law had not said, you must not have evil desires in your heart. Now that said something different in that last verse. What did it say in the last verse? The last verse said, thou shalt not covet. And in this one it says, you must not have evil desires in your heart. Are they different? Well, no, they aren't. All right, I'm going to get to that. This is the whole, this whole episode is something Saul was probably very intimate with early in his life. He's a Jewish boy. What do they go through at the age of 13? They go through that thing called bar mitzvah, which means he's coming of age. He becomes a son of the law, right? Son of the law. The Ten Commandments. Now, you can't read that. I was thinking it'd be a little bit bigger than that. But I'm sure you have the Ten Commandments memorized. So we'll look at these for a second. Right? They're memorized? It says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. And the Lord your God, don't be taking the name in vain. And the Sabbath day. And then that fifth one, which kids seem to mess up all the time. You know, what's that fifth one, Michaela? Honor thy father and mother. It's actually, that's the longest one of them all. It's the longest one. It stops right there, but you forget it's got a whole bunch of other things, and it ends so you can live a long life. If you don't honor your mother and father, life kind of gets a little shorter. I've heard comedians say, I took yak, I get this world, I take yak. But then we get into these other ones, and when you are a person, and you're looking at the law, you're looking at these last ones here, and you sort of size yourself up. And that's what Saul probably did. And what other people that are immersed into the law says, thou shalt not kill. Check. I'm not killing anybody. I'm all over that one. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Check. I love my wife. That's certainly not going to happen. I'm good to go. Thou shalt not steal. Not robbing any banks. Are you? Of course, you're forgetting about that nickel off the coffee table, but we're not going to get into that. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. I'm not going to lie. I'm a truth sayer. That's what I am. That's what I am. We all say that. We all sort of make ourselves believe that. But then we get to that last one, that final one, which says, thou shalt not covet. That is so much bigger than we ever imagined. Little cartoon here. Got two women there. It says at the bottom, have you ever tried not to covet when you're in the mall? It gave me an anxiety attack. Because we do it all the time. If you sit back and think about it, there's almost not a day that goes by we're not coveting something. Now I'll tell you an example where I covet all the time. I so covet that the Pittsburgh Penguins win another championship. I want that. I want that. But that's coveting. That is coveting. That's trivial. No, it's not. No, it's not. It wasn't that long ago where somebody had mentioned that it sort of put a little fluffy, light coating to what sin is or what sin isn't. And that's a problem with what we humans do and why we're never going to attain that whole holiness, is because we continue to make excuses why something's sort of okay, why something's not. It's not as sinful. What do you mean it's not sinful? Sin is sin. And covetousness is that first domino that just knocks everything else down. And all that other stuff, well, it's not there now, but all that other stuff happens because that covetousness gets in the way first. Having it last is kind of messes you up a little bit. Your life is filled with coveting. Saul began to see himself as he really was, full of covetousness. And not only that, he wanted to covet even more now that he's seen it. He became conscious of it in Romans 3:20. For no one can ever be made right with God. Can't be made right by doing what the law commands. The law simply is there to show us just exactly how sinful we really are. And it's like looking in the mirror. In fact, James 1:23-25 says that very same thing. What is it? Yeah, that's it. It says, but be doers of the word, and not just hearers only, deceiving ourselves, which is what we like to do all the time, which is why it says deceive ourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a person observing his natural face in a mirror. He observes himself, and then goes away and immediately forgets what kind of man he really was. I mean, it shines a spotlight. And at that point, you're going to have to make a decision. Do I acknowledge what it is I'm looking at, or do I go ahead and make an excuse? Well, my features are okay. I'm a pretty dashing looking guy. Why do I not have any girlfriends? I do not understand this. Verses 8 and 9. But sin, this is what law does. It does even more than what we just said. It not only reveals the sin when you see it, it activates it. Is the law good? Yeah, it activates it. That's why it's good. But sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, produced in me every kind of coveted desires all over the place. I'm coveting everywhere. For apart from the law, sin is dead. Once I was alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came in, sin sprang to life and I died. That sounds misleading a little bit. Chuck used, what's the Bible use? The Amplified or something like that? What's that called? Yeah. I've got one too. It's called Raz's Amplification. I'm going to read you Raz's Amplification right now. Right? What's that? Oh. Verses 8-9, Raz version. And but sin, setting up a base of operations in me through the commandment of do not covet. What it did was produce in me coveting of every kind. Apart from the law, sin is dead or dormant. Or even better, I was ignorant to the sins that was within me. I was alive, blissfully ignorant. You've heard of that. Ignorance is bliss. Blissfully ignorant to the searching demands of the law. But when the commandment not to covet came to a realization, sin sprang to life. Or rather, I was made very uncomfortably aware of my sins. And I felt the sentence of death become very real to me. The raspberry. I should write my own Bible. I think that's a little bit easier to understand right there. Not my own Bible, but rather the RAZ version of the Bible. Good. Saul realized what covetous was all about. Romans 5:20, giving back to how everything leads to what we're talking about here. God's law was given so that all people could see how sinful they were. St. Augustine talks about this. He does a really good job at talking about, because once you really come to understand the 7th chapter, it really becomes kind of crystal clear. He says this, he says, and there's a pear tree out near our vineyard, laden with fruit. One stormy night, you all know St. Augustine's from back in the day, right? One stormy night, we rascally youths, I love these rascally youths. It kind of identifies the time period, I suppose. We rascally youths set out to rob it and carry our spoils away. We took off with a huge load of pears. We didn't really want to eat it ourselves. We just wanted to give them to the pigs. Though we ate a couple few because, you know, the pleasure of forbidden fruit. Now, they were nice pears, they were. But it was not the pears that my wretched soul coveted. And it goes back to that whole covet. The ignition of everything else. For I had plenty better pears and fruits at home. I picked them simply in order to become a thief. The only feast I got was a thief of iniquity that I enjoyed to its fullest. What was it that I loved in that theft? It was the pleasure of acting against the law. You can't tell me what to do. And in that, by the way, and I'll get to the rest of this here in 2 shakes, comes that temporary freedom we think we have through the law. But it's fleeting, and it's gone, and it doesn't last as long as it is from everywhere else. So it was a pleasure of acting against the law in order that I, a prisoner of the rules, might have maimed and counterfeited of the freedom by doing what was forbidden with a dim stimulating of omnipotence. The desire to steal was awakened simply by prohibiting of the stealing. Not a lot of those pears can't tell me what to do, dadgummit. I can do what I want to do. And everybody knows it. And every single person that ever sees this sign has always had the same thing. Everybody. And if you don't, then you're lying probably. Wet paint, don't touch. But I want to touch it. You didn't before. There's this the donut shop down in town. It's closed now. I think it's Jubilees. They had good donuts. Why is it closed? That's another issue for another day. They've got this great big window out front. It's pretty big. And it's nice, it's clean, it's not scratched. Put a sign on there that says you are forbidden to break this window. How long will it last? How long will it last? It's like challenging somebody. Cool. Don't break that window. It'll be broken in a week, let alone a night maybe. All you have to do is say, don't do something, and boom, springs up your covetous desire. Not only does the law point out the sin, not only does the law activate sin, the law also kills. Let me get to that one here right now. Verses 10 and 11. It says this, the very commandment that was intended to bring life actually brings death. For sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, deceived me, and through the commandment, put me to death. This is one of the easier ones to explain as well. The commandment, perfectly kept, brings life. One man has ever done that. I don't think I need to explain who that is. And it just is impossible for everybody else in the world. So what happens upon that one sin? That you're sentenced to death. It's condemnation. Death reigns. Broken. It brings death. But the letter kills. The Spirit gives life. You're under condemnation. Born into death. Thanks to the letter of the law. Thanks to your association with the law. It does bring death. Now, the most important thing that the law does is it shows us the absolute magnitude of the sin. The magnitude of sin. Verses 12 and 13. So then, the law is holy. Because you remember back a few verses ago, he said, so is the law evil? No. No, it's good. And he says it again here. So then the law is holy. The commandment is holy, righteous, and good. Did that which is good then. It became death unto me? Yea! By no means. By no means did it produce death. It did produce death, but not in a way that we continue to misunderstand it. By no means. But in order that produced death in me through what was good, so that through the commandment, sin might be utterly sinful. We might be able to come to a point where we quit making excuses for the sinful desires in our hearts. Because if it increases sin, and sin continues to compound, it becomes distasteful and disgusting and continues to rise to get bigger and bigger and bigger. For some of us, before the gospel, we had blissful unawareness of our sins. We began to see something of God's righteous requirements, and our sinfulness became painfully apparent. And you put that up to the holiness of God, and we continue to get sinker and lower into that ground, that hole we keep digging into. The more I understand God's law, the more I see the utter disdain, sinful garbage that continues to pile higher and higher. The first pillar of wisdom, the first pearl of understanding, recognition, is our debt to that. We're no longer bound to that law, that understanding, that condemnation. The second pillar shows the persuasiveness of sin and how much in control sin has been in our lives. And the third pillar of wisdom is this is it. This is the I want to do, but I don't do, I can't do it, I can't, and I want to, back and forth. It brings the understanding of what it's like for the believer to struggle against the law within themselves. All right? So this is a conflict of law and self. Now, Romans 7, when this is read and looked at by many great people, they come to three kind of different conclusions of where the perspective is coming from. The first one is that it's the unrepentant Pharisee, and the Greek fathers will tell you that's what they're going through. All right? The second one is the normal Christian and their struggles. And that comes through Augustine, Luther, and Calvin will come to that. And the third one is a modern take on it. And they'll say it's a carnal Christian. And I'm going to tell you that's a bunch of hooey. Right here and now. Hooey. And it's hooey because this is Paul talking in the first person, autobiographical in nature, in how he speaks. In this being a personal tug of war in his very soul and his being. And he's not carnal at the time that this is all going on. He's very much in love with God and wants to have a better relationship with him. That's not a carnal Christian. Carnal is physically necessitated, sexually necessitated, needs, activities that are very worldly. That's carnal. And that's not Paul at the time of this that is going on. The self-portrait. Paul describes himself not as a so-called carnal Christian, but as one who loves the law of God. We do. We want to do what's right at all times. He longs to please God. But here's his mistake, and here's our mistake. Right? He tries to do it in his own strength, in of ourselves. This is the experience of every Christian. And this is why Paul's being so personal with this. He says, you think you're doing this alone? You think you're all by yourself? Don't think again, Christian. This is everybody's opportunity in Christian life to go through this kind of back and forth. This is reality. And if I haven't said it before, being a Christian isn't for wimps. It's not for wimps. Verses 14 through 16. We know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold and slave to sin. I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree the law is good. Is there a recurring theme in there anywhere? This is Paul talking about himself. I. And when we are in this back and forth struggle, it is always an I. What can I do? How can I tame what's going on inside me? Somebody once said after reading the whole thing, it's hard to read it at any length and come to a complete understanding Does anybody play golf? Because you know, if you're standing on the tee, you want to hit that ball down the fairway. It's a little bit thin. Make sure my shoulder width apart. Keep my head down, my eyes on the ball. Point my shoulder. Keep my wrists together. Make sure I roll them. I don't want to come under. I don't want to go over it. I might slice the hook, and then you make that swing, and there it goes off. That's not what I wanted to do. I want to hit the fairway. This is so daggone frustrating. Throw my clubs. And the Christian has gone through this. How many untold masses of people have gone to the pastors with this very thing? What must I do? I want to do what's right, but I continue to do what's wrong. This is so daggone maddening, Pastor. What must I do? It's the kind of believer who's trying to rely on themselves. Verses 17 through 20. As it is, it's no longer I, myself that does it, but it's sin living in me. I know that nothing good lives in me. That is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what's good, but I can't carry it out. I think that's one of the more important verses we have in the 7th chapter. I have the desire to do what's good. I haven't. The Christian does. The one that has been baptized, that has separated themselves from the law, is living and trying to get into that Christian life. Right? They have the desire to do what's good. But I can't carry it out myself. I can't carry it. For what I do is not the good that I want to. No, the evil that I do not want to do, this I keep doing. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, it's no longer I who do it, but it's sin lived in me that does it, right? It is no longer I myself who do it. It is no longer I who do it. English sounds wrong. It should be does it or something like that. But it is the Bible. He's not saying that he's possessed and that something else is within him forcing him to do something else. It's muscle memory. When Paul went to Damascus, right, he was on that road, and Jesus came down and said, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you forsaking my name? What are you doing? Believe I'm going to have to blind you now. You're going to go into Damascus. You're going to wait. Got a guy for you. He's going to come pray for you. Things are going to be okay." So he goes into Damascus blind. Nobody else saw anything. This happened just for Paul. Acts 9, I think. And then in a dream, God comes to Ananias. Ananias, listen, got a guy coming. He's going to be my boy. He's going to work out for me. His name is Saul. Saul, we know that guy. He's spewing hatred towards us. God, I don't want to go to him. Oh, no. You need to trust me. You're going to go pray for him because he's going to do great things for the church he is. You do it, okay? If you say so, I will. And he goes to Paul. And there's Paul. Everything God just said is happening to him. He lived a life of devotion to the law. Word for word, that was his life. And now all of a sudden this amazing transformation happened. It's hard to not empathize with him. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. Can you imagine how he felt like? He got baptized, and then he goes to the desert for 3 years. What do you think he was doing for 3 years in the desert? Right? He was going through this. It was extremely personal for him. This isn't anything nobody else has gone through. Everybody has gone through this. And he wants you to know, I went through this. 3 years of back and forth, and I, but it's not I. Wendy and I went to Lowe's the other day, and every time we go to Lowe's, every time we go in that direction, we don't go to Lowe's, we go to Walmart. So where do you think we ended up? We ended up at Walmart. There. Lowe's is up there. Of course, I should have said that. That was wrong. We got there anyways. The muscle memory. And that's what happens to the Christian. They've lived their lives so much to the law, to the world, to the sin, that it's very difficult, it's very overwhelming to come to grips with the life of God. A a guy by the name of Thomas Kempis wrote the same frustration. He says, man, I desire to enjoy thee inwardly, but I cannot take thee. I desire to cleave to the heavenly things, but fleshly things and unmortified passions depress me. I will in my mind to be above all things, but in spite of myself, I am constrained to be beneath. So I am an unhappy man. I fight with myself. I am made grievous to myself, while the Spirit seeketh what is beneath. But what I suffer within, well, as I think on heavenly things, in my mind, the company of fleshly things come against me when I pray. And that mind, that's really the key, because we can't unsee things. We can't undo things. It's always there, and that's why the fight continues. I mean, this is all should be fresh for each and every. We should never have forgotten the fight, or the fight that's still coming for anybody that's about to go through any of this. And this is why we lose so many people in the process, and why it's important that the fellowship of Christ always gathers around the new believer, because they're about to go through the fight of their life, and they're going to need support. Paul understands what's happening at such times. Verses 21 through 23. So I find this law which is at work. When I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being, I delight in God's law. I mean, I do in my inner being, but I see another work, a law at work in the members of my body, waging war against the laws of my mind, and making me a prisoner of the sin that's at work within my members. Why is this important? Why must a Christian go through this kind of painful aggravation in our lives? It is painful. Is this really worth it? You might start to ask yourself. I went through a kind of a training in the Army. It was 3 weeks long, without telling you what it was. And what they do in this training is they break you down mentally and physically as much as they could. I mean, you're allowed 4 hours of sleep. So they have you go to bed at 8 o'clock and get you up at midnight, because that's the start of the next day. You do 2 events a day. And it is easily one of the more hellish events on earth that man can come up with. It's a test. You're tired, you're physically drained, you're mentally drained, but you still got to somehow get yourself into a position where you can complete the mission anyways. Why? Because if you are a part of the particular people that we're talking about here, and you're overseas, you have no support. They need to know that you have the mental, physical capability to complete the mission without support. Christian, one day where the rubber is going to meet the road. And you're going to need to have the knowledge and understanding and mental capacity to be able to be a soldier for Christ. And that's why we're going. This is called trial by fire. Trial by fire. We have a lot of wishy-washy Christians out there. Do we have an exodus of Christians? Nope, I don't think so. We have an exodus of people that used to call themselves Christian in name only, that's for sure. But those of us that have fought the fight and have come out on the other side are still standing. And that's the point of all this. The Christian is subject to 2 forces simultaneously, and thus lives in a state of tension. Galatians says that for the sinful nature desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit is what is contrary for the sinful nature. They are in conflict with each other, so that you do not do what you want. This is not a solo event right here in Romans. It's something Paul likes people to understand everywhere he goes and all the people he's talking to. This is Galatians. The 7th chapter of Romans is a very passionate piece of writing, and Paul wants us to feel the emotion that he feels, because you're not alone in the events. A believer who tries to please God in his or her own strength will always come up dishearteningly, achingly, and frustratingly failure. You're always going to have those Christians out there that have made some kind of spiritual sin, their covetousness sin, is different than everybody else's. God knows what I'm going through. God knows. I can't get around this particular sin. I can't. I didn't read that in here. I didn't see the place where it says, everybody, is subject to this sin except for this one person. No, that's not in there. And that's part of the spiritual warfare that we're a part of. And we need to come to grips with and terms with. Nobody's exempt. Nobody. And that's part of the battle. That's a part of the back and forth. You can be anything you want. Just believe in yourself. Right? Nothing is impossible for you. Be true to yourself. That's got to be the number one thing I hate most of all. We're being filled with this spiritual warfare. It comes at us from everywhere. From the TV, from misguided parents, from everywhere. It's no wonder the amount of Christians versus everybody else is such a disparaging difference in our lives. And it's no wonder why we need to wake up and see this and be more active in the society we live in. Great big old miserable meat sandwich is what we have in society. And this happens to everybody. Good Christians, great Christians. Paul is one of the better Christians I know. And this leads us to the position that he wants us in, that God wants us in. Right? We go through this fight. When we were in the Army, we had, in base training, pugil fighting. If anybody knows, it looks like a great big Q-tip thing. And once you do it, fight with the next guy for about 30 seconds, you're destroyed. You're tired. You can't lift you up. 30 seconds is all it takes. When you're in battle, when you're in fight, when you're using all your mental capacity for all this, you're done. You want to curl up on the ground and give up. That's what you want to do. And that's the position that we're digging down now. We're at our fourth little level, and we're down in the hole pretty far now. We're falling down to the foundation of this pillar of truth, of understanding, of reconciliation, of wisdom. And it's called the believer's power. Where does this lead us to? Oh, wretched man that I am, who will set me free from this body of death? We finally reached a state of wretchedness. What is wretched? It's an adjective. It means a miserable, distressed condition. Paul has come to the bottom of the hole. He has reached the end of his rope. And if you've dug down all the way down to the bottom of our pillar, and all you see is walls around you. You can't get out of the hole. What do you got to do? You've got to finally, at this point, you've got to finally look up. This is great. Now I've got something to work with, God says. We finally got you to a point where you stripped off all of your selfishness and me, and I desires, and we're to a point where we can do something. We reach that point where what the very first Beatitude says. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Are you ready, God says? It's not, you can't do anything. It's going to be me or nothing. You're never going to be able to be holy if you continue to harbor a covetousness nature. Paul's actually in fine shape. As long as we continue to think we can do something, I got this handled, you're going to be spinning your tires in chapter 7 for a very long time. And these are the last two verses. This is where we leapfrog into a growth. How does Paul handle this? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. But that is the end. That's the end. That's the point. What does he not say in his last one? He doesn't say, hey, what can I do? He says, who's going to rescue me? He is given up. And God says, hey, got a plan, got a mission, I've got a way for things to work out for you. Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ. He anticipates something. Right? Something else he knew very well the victory of the power of the indwelling Spirit coming soon to a pulpit near you, where the growth of God can actually work with something. The first pillar was what? It was our marriage to the law that's been broken by our death and resurrection of Christ. The law no longer has control over you. You're no longer condemned. That's the first pillar of understanding. The first level. You dig down a little further to the second one, and the law is good. It reveals the righteousness. It activates sin. It starts to show us all the sin starts to pile up, and it lets us see it for what it is and how disgusting it is. It brings us to a point of contention with sin. And then in the third one, we dig down a little bit further. We're getting down there. A believer tries to live a life pleasing to God on his own merit. That doesn't work. And so this big war and conflict breaks out. You're free from all this, but you still fight with it. And that's a whole muscle memory. It's very overwhelming, and you get tired, and you're done, and you just want to give up. And if you're not one of those that retreats back to your old life, you do the one thing you can do, and then you look up to God and say, man, I give up. I can't do anything. Bingo! Thanks be to God, through Jesus Christ our Lord. The law is what will expose the evil force and drive us to this place of wretchedness, that we might then, in devotion of spirit, cry out to the Lord, can you save me? Blessed is the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Psalms 118. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Where are we at, Christian? Are we still making excuses? Are we spinning our tires in chapter 7? Or are we at the foundation of understanding and truth and revelation and are ready to give everything we have to God? I mean, if you don't get to that point, you're never going to grow. There's nothing else I can say about this. I pray that chapter 7 has become a little bit more understandable to you all, because I know that for me, it used to be a little bit difficult, but it's not when you break it down like we have. It really is pretty easy. I'm not subject to it all. I'm not subject to condemnation. That relationship no longer means anything to me. I see the sin. I went through the struggle. And I've been to a place where I said, I give up. There's nothing else I can do. And that's my prayer for each and every one of you all right here now. And I pray that this week we think on these things. Let's go to the Lord in prayer.